Despite being roughly 14% of the U.S. population, and despite rising levels of education, income, and professional attainment, Black Americans, according to a Brookings Institute study, account for less than 3% of employer-owned businesses. That gap has persisted for generations. However, this could have been surmounted if Blacks had monopolized their creative talent in music as entrepreneurs, creating an empire of their own. The problem is not that Black enterprise never existed. It did. Repeatedly, the problem is that it was rarely allowed by Black leadership choices to mature into durable, scalable institutions. This is usually explained as a result of racism alone. That explanation is incomplete, but rests on two factors, external and internal. This inability stems from two factors. External, white control of the economy and racism in the guise of segregation. It blocked Blacks from being able to participate in the open market. Internally, African-American leadership had been either ambivalent or hostile towards Black popular music, which stymied the development of Black music as a platform for economic self-sufficiency and self-organization. Black economic development has not been stagnant. It has been self-limiting. After post-emancipation, the formerly enslaved, often viewed collectively as the Negro problem, had to address the issues of education and economic self-sufficiency. But how does one achieve economic self-sufficiency if one is cut off, segregated from participating in the open market? You have before you the Fisk Jubilee Singers. The Fisk Jubilee Singers are very important because I consider them the first emancipated act of African American show business, because they are the ones who basically brought spirituals to the market. They introduced it, and what's very interesting about this is that these folks kind of show you the possibility that you can use music to make money as a resource for things like hospitals, schools, and businesses. But this was not considered the thing to do. Interestingly, Black popular music, especially spirituals, showed evidence of raising funds for worthwhile endeavors, such as education, as in the case of the Fisk Jubilee Singers, which was of critical importance to Blacks after they had been in bondage for nearly 300 years. However, Negro educators like Booker T. Washington used it fitfully for immediate fundraising purposes or abandoned it. Despite the immense talent of the Black masses in regard to music and white audiences' receptiveness to Black musical forms, Negro leadership never sought to organize the potential of Black music into a scalable industry that could have served as a platform for economic self-sufficiency. A model of such didn't rise until almost a century later when Berry Gordy established Motown. That Negro leadership, which comprised political leaders, the business class, and the intelligentsia, never envisioned the potential is due to them having become miseducated, not being able to see Black potential unless they adhered to white norms. As stated by Woodson, when you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. You do not have to tell him to stand here or go yonder. He will find his proper place and stay in it. You do not need to send him to the back door. He will go without being told. In fact, if there is no back door, he will cut one out for himself, for his special benefit. His education makes it necessary. For more than a century, miseducated Black leadership places greatest faith in moral legitimacy, legal recognition, and professional advancement, or as Booker T. Washington boiled it down to, brains, property, and character. Those pursuits were understandable. They were, however, also strategically insufficient. They also did not allow for the development of devious Negroes with mercantile guile. And I'll show you a good example of mercantile guile when we get to Booker T. Washington. For post-emancipation to the Civil Rights era, 1877 to the 1960s, this mindset was prevalent and as such was alienated from its own folk culture and could not give leadership in shaping or assessing Black popular music as an economic resource or as a cultural tool for political mobilization. A fair amount of this attitude was also driven by Negro leadership bourgeois class bias. To be blunt, the Black bourgeoisie has always held the Black lower class, especially working class Southern Negroes, in contempt. They often exhibited what is called a my race, but not my taste disdain for those who were considered lower class. Yet, this is the same class that created spirituals, folk song, blues, ragtime, jazz, R&B, rock and roll, soul, funk, and later hip hop. And God knows where else those Negroes are coming up with next. This is classic because another factor in why the Black elite is very ambivalent about Black music is because of its association with minstrel shows. This is the first mass commercial entertainment from the 1820s to the 1870s. It was popular in northern urban cities in which whites darkened their faces and pretended to engage in Negro frolics. Such a leadership, however, did not see or view music as intellectual property that stemmed from cultural production or control of show business by Negroes themselves. Blacks have exhibited tremendous soft power or influence in shaping and defining American culture by a way of idiom and style, but have lacked hard power in the ownership of the means of production or cultural dissemination. As an alienated leadership shaped by miseducation and respectability politics, the Black bourgeoisie mismanaged Black patrimony, which is music, which may be one of the very few carryovers from Africa that survived the transatlantic slave trade. That Black music came from Africa made it synonymous with barbarity and lack of civilization. This carryover formed an inchoate rhythm nation in America and exists as a near primordial force on a subterranean level within African American culture, but has rarely been industrially organized by Blacks themselves, except for Motown. It has existed mostly as a dependable but exploitable talent pool for the music industry. That this leadership did not pay attention to the development of Black popular music as an economic platform in the quest for economic self-sufficiency, which had often been, along with education, a primary goal of African Americans. Because it neglected the economic potential of popular music, while as a segregated minority, Black popular music was channeled, colonized, and exploited talent within the larger white-dominated entertainment industry. The NAACP didn't even issue a report on the music industry until 1987, years after big music had already captured independent Black music in the early 70s, and 1 year before Berry Gordy sold Motown to MCA. This neglect is one of a series of missed opportunities and laid the foundation of a series of them by so-called race leaders when African Americans were segregated. This leadership has mismanaged the Black patrimony by failing to understand that Black popular music would become a crucial component of what Harold Cruse described as the burgeoning mass communication cultural industry. Quote, mass cultural communication is a basic industry, as basic as oil, steel, and transportation in its own way. Developing along with it, supporting it, subservient to it, is an organized network of functions that are creative, administrative, propagandistic, educational, recreational, political, artistic, economic, and cultural. Taken as a whole, this enterprise involves what C. Wright Mills called the cultural apparatus. Only the blind cannot see that whoever controls the cultural apparatus, whatever class, power group, faction, or political combine, also controls the destiny of the United States and everything in it. Popular culture, music, entertainment, leisure, was treated as morally suspect, politically unserious, and economically marginal. Yet these were the very arenas where Black people generated mass value, set national tastes, and commanded global attention. Once again, soft power. The quest for economic self-sufficiency has always been an agenda item of Black America, since Blacks have been segregated. However, Blacks face specific hurdles as minority denied access to the open market. First, as Drake and Caton articulate in Black Metropolis, written in 1945, a study in Negro Chicagoans, Blacks as Americans are susceptible to the folklore of American capitalism. As quote, as participants in the general American culture, they are exposed to a system that places a high premium upon business success and white-collar occupation. Financial power and economic control bring these political and social rewards in which had traditionally been supposed to serve as incentive to thrift, enterprise, and hard work. Negroes using the same school textbooks as whites, reading the same papers, attending the same movies, and in constant contact with the white world tend to incorporate the general ideals of American life. Inevitably, they measure progress since slavery partly in terms of the position of power and prestige Negroes attain in the business world. Objective reality, however, is at variance with the ideal. No Negro sits on the board of directors in LaSalle, this is in Chicago. None trades in a grain pit or has a seat on the stock exchange. None owns a skyscraper. Negro girls are seldom seen in the offices and stores at the Louvre except as maids. Another objective reality is the lack of access to capital and markets. Once again, Drake and Caton. For Negro businesses to compete, quote, for Negro businesses to compete with white businesses in Negro communities, they must meet the price and give equivalent service. Negro businessmen insist that they face 5 main competitive difficulties. 1, difficulty in procuring capital and credit. 2, difficulty in getting adequate training. 3, inability to secure locations on the main business streets. 4, lack of sufficient patronage to allow them to amass capital to make improvements. 5, inability to organize for cooperative efforts. However, despite the advocacy of economic self-sufficiency or business development or communal cooperative by Booker T. Washington, W. Du Bois, and Marcus Garvey, such leaders consistently ignored the potentiality of Black music. Black higher education institutions likewise failed to know the economic potential of Black popular music. By not doing so, they failed to educate potential generations of Black managers and executives who might have started businesses of their own or maintain control over the wealth that the music recording industry has generated via Black talent. Even today, very few HBCs give higher level courses regarding the music industry. I love this. This is like, mwah. Howard University is one of 3 HBCUs along with Tennessee State University and Fisk that offers substantial business programs in the music business. Howard University, often recognized as the de facto flagship of the HBCUs, didn't even recognize jazz as an academic subject until the early 1970s, an era when the major labels have begun incorporating independent record labels as recommended by the Harvard report. In 2021, Howard University School of Business received $4.9 million from the Blavatnik Family Foundation to institute the Blavatnik Music Business Program at that school. Not Duke Ellington, not Louis Armstrong, The program seeks to train the next generation of Black managers and executives in the music business, which is primarily owned by white businesses and operated by white executives. It should also be noted that Len Blavatnik, a billionaire businessman via Access Holdings, owns Warner Music Group. This ownership and donation may well be a good example of what Russell Simmons once said, quote, "Black culture is too significant in American culture for Blacks to be glorified employees." The corporations that have extracted and exploited Black creative talent have been aided and abetted by a Black leadership that has ignored the industry beneath the feet of a dynamic rhythm nation. To borrow from Proverbs, chapter 29, verse 18, where there is no vision, the people perish. In this case, because African-American leadership had no vision of popular music as a platform for economic self-sufficiency, African-American economic development is best characterized as being in a state of arrested development. Instead of building industries around the potentiality of Black music, leadership distanced itself from it. The result was predictable. Value was created faster than institutions were built to retain it. Others arrived with capital, contracts, and distribution, and extraction followed. Each generation started over. Gains did not compound. Enterprises remained personal and not institutional. Symbolic victories substituted for balance sheets. This is not a story of cultural failure. It is a story of strategic misallocation, of elite decisions that narrow the definition of acceptable Black enterprise and cap the scale of Black ambition. The 5 figures I will discuss, Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, James Weldon Johnson, Marcus Garvey, and Nannie Helen Burroughs, represent very different ideologies and thought leaders in their respective fields. They disagree sharply with one another, yet all in distinct ways participated in the same pattern: a failure to fully recognize, organize, and institutionalize the economic power already beneath the feet of a dynamic rhythm nation.